Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I'm speaking to Gabriel Foster Prior, the director and writer of the Bystanders. Gabriel's actually over in Cannes at the moment, so it's a great opportunity to chat to him about the film and also about what he's up to in Cannes. Hi, Gabriel. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Good, good, good. So I've seen the film, loved it. Wasn't at all what I was expecting. So just so that people can find out a bit about it, can you tell me what the film's about?
So now I really want to know what you're expecting, but I'll ask you that afterwards. Uh, but it's basically like it's a comedy about guardian angels, but I say guardian angels as kind of a shorthand because they're not actually angels. They don't have wings and halos. But the idea is that we all have one supposedly looking after us. And they're recruited from the human world. And the people that they pick to become bystanders are people that won't be missed if they vanish. So it's a kind of a world of oddballs. The film's a buddy movie between two of these bystanders, as we call them. And one of them's been doing it for a while and he's quite jaded, and the other one's a newbie and he's very enthusiastic. But essentially, these bystanders are meant to be looking after us, but they're lazy, they're irresponsible, they are sometimes drunk, and they kind of hate the humans that they have to look after because in general we're frustrating as humans, can be, but also especially at the moment we spend a lot of times looking at screens and on our phones, and we've got kind of boring. So yeah, that's the bystanders in a kind of nutshell.
In a nutshell. So what I was expecting, I wasn't expecting to laugh as much as I did. So it was
Oh, that's
funny.
good.
It was really good because often you hear someone says comedy, and comedies can be very subjective. So you never know if you're actually going to connect with humor. So I thought it was funny, and also I think you made a lot of sort of stylistic choices in it that I wasn't expecting. So I think I was expecting sort of not a standard comedy, but a comedy that goes a certain
Mm.
way. But obviously, you've got all the color, the pinging in and out, which people are going to see when they watch it. So I thought that
Mm.
was really cool. Um,
Nice.
the first thing that struck me though, because I noticed you'd had a short theatrical release on it.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I'll come to that in a second. But the first thing that struck me from a filmmaker point of view is comedy science fiction. Is that a hard sell? Was that hard sell in the funding end, or and has it been a hard sell in the sales end?
So the things with the science fiction is that me and the co-writer Jack Hughes, we never really talked about it as being sci-fi because it was like, 'cause angels are not. It's even if they look like angels, like it's angels, not aliens. So
Yeah.
you kind of don't really think. And it's obvious to me now, but it's like it was only once we started getting into sci-fi film festivals that I really clocked how much of it is, viewed as a sci-fi.
Mm.
To be fair, there was also some quite aesthetic kind of sci-fi elements. Like, I think the score, we took a lot of inspiration from sci-fi in the score. So it was actually my dad did the score of
Oh, really?
Foster. He's a musician, obviously, but he did this score with loads of these like old instruments, like 50s instruments, like theremins and stuff.
Mm.
Without going off on too much of a tangent, that's just kind of the point being that it has sci-fi aesthetics
Mm.
more than it has a sci-fi story. But and then it was always a we kind of saw it as like a kind of, yeah, an indie kind of quirky comedy. In terms of your question, in terms of like how that relates to getting financing and stuff, it really did. It does make it hard. It is something people tell you not to do. So you're meant to make like low budget horror movies, and
Hmm.
you're not really meant to make low budget comedies because they relate to the cast. I guess one of the only things I had on my side is I know Sean Walsh, the actor, and I know some other comedians kind of through him or through having done. We did like a web series together called The Drunk, where that's how I got Marek Larwood on board. So it wasn't going to be a cast of people that were no one had heard of. Though in the UK, there's people in it that got really good careers as comedic performers, and so that kind of helps in that sense. But I mean, we did find that, like, in terms of like getting, like, we try to get like the normal streams of, you go down the road of like public funding and stuff. And I think it was kind of people didn't really know how weirdly I was going to do it, like you
Mm.
said about your expectations. So I think people were more expecting it to be a more standard kind of comedy,
Hmm.
and I think they thought it was too commercial for the public world.
Yeah.
So when it came to like those kind of schemes, and then in terms of private finance, yeah, maybe it's not exactly the right genre to do on a low budget. And the first time filmmaker, it's always really hard to get private finance because people want a track record, which is completely fair enough. Like if you're investing a lot of money in a business, you want it to see it has a track record. So yeah, we did kind of find ourselves in a bit of a rock between a rock and a hard place in that kind of regard. And in the end, we just decided to do it with whatever we could get together and do it for much less budget than we originally had planned.
Mm.
And it was just one of those, like, let's just get it done kind of things. Let's just do it. Like, let's not just wait for the perfect, situation to come about. We just decided to just go for it,
Yeah, good move. And so completely self-financed is how the film was made?
Yeah, there's not completely. There's a few private financiers, but with small, in our kind of realm of indie, like small amounts, and yeah, basically, and I'm an editor, film editor is my job. So I was editing a film and trying to save some money from the editing.
Yeah.
And then we also did like I take some breaks, forced breaks, just actually it was originally for COVID. But then also that was a chance to like work more, save up more, do some more shooting.
I'd wholeheartedly support that methodology, because I think with any project you can only get so far, definitely with sort of public funding and the private investment stuff. If you can't just keep beating that and beating it forever, you've got to at some point say, right, we've just got to make this thing happen. And unfortunately, if that does mean using your own money, it's you just have to go for it. So I'm
Yeah, and
curious.
I had meetings with producers, and you just kind of get bored of hearing these. Obviously, there's loads of really good producers out there, but there's also a sea of kind of less legitimate, and you just get bored of hearing these like fairy stories. You know what I mean? I'd be like listening to a producer telling me he was like how he got a friend of a friend is Ryan Reynolds, and he's going to get Ryan
Oh,
Reynolds to film. And I had years of people telling me these stories, and I just got really bored of it. It's like, let's just make the film. We'll just stop like waiting for these. Is that I describe it like sometimes when you're listening to these producers, it's a bit like listening to a kid talk about how he's going to be an astronaut when he grows up.
yeah.
Like it's not 100% not going to happen, but yeah.
But then ironically, you've gone to Cannes, which is riddled with people like that.
Yeah,
you
I'm
you
probably
know you
one of them.
literally,
Yeah,
you bump into them everywhere.
I'm just as much of a chancer as anyone else. Uh,
So then the bit that I was really interested in when I looked at it, because I didn't realize until after I'd sort of done a bit of digging, was you had a theatrical release on it. So how did you manage that?
So I've got a sales agent, Screenbound International, and they hooked me out with a company called Blue Dolphin. Really, really, really happy with Blue Dolphin. I thought they did a really great job. And it was a small release, like a boutique. We just did a handful of like independent cinemas. We do Q&As with them, and it did well enough. Like it hit our expectations, so we were happy with how it went. And it was a chance for people to see it on the big screen. That there was people that obviously there was a limit to how many people we could reach to actually know about it. But anyone that hadn't already kind of known about it, or that we managed to reach out to, it gave people a chance to see it on the big screen, which was really nice because obviously I've done a year of festivals, and it is really nice seeing it on the big screen. But it also, if I'm talking to other filmmakers, and the honest truth is, it's not about making money from selling tickets. For us, the honest thing is that we're doing a release because we want to be able to get the reviews that you wouldn't get if you didn't have the release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we saw it as a kind of break-even exercise where we would, but by getting ourselves out there, we would hope to get some extra kind of exposure.
Yeah.
So obviously, and it did really work out. Like I was really happy. Like we got a really nice, 4-star total film and SFX magazine as well, and we got a really nice review in the Guardian. And there were people that were like, they just treat it like it doesn't matter if you're a low budget movie. Your film's getting released in the cinema, they treat it like they would anything else, and that's really cool because we have like the physical magazines of Total Film and SFX. Like I went to WH Smith's, and saw my low budget indie that I'd made like in the review section next to the biggest films of the day, and
Mm,
that's just a really really cool feeling. So and then people kind of, I think the reviewers also did like factor in that it is a low budget film into their opinions as well, and like saw it for what it was,
mm,
which was really cool. um yeah, and we did some radio, we did some you just get to put yourself out there a little bit more.
mm.
um so yeah, I would recommend it if you can.
Yeah,
If you think you're gonna, there's no point if you're not going to get anyone to come along, and also you have to do the work.
yeah,
Like Lou Dolphin did a great job. Also, I had to do my own like social media and other things, and just like texting, spreading the word
yeah,
literally. And so, but yeah, I think if you can, I would say it's definitely worth it.
yeah. That's good advice. Um, and I was going to ask you, so you had a pretty good festival run, and obviously festivals are something that filmmakers struggle with because there's so many of them, and it can be super expensive entering them all, not knowing whether
Mm.
you've got a chance in hell. Um, any advice for that? Are there any secret tricks you use to get into festivals, or has it all been I've entered and I've managed to get in?
Well, I'd made short films before, and I think that most people who're going to make their first feature will have done that. So hopefully you've got some experience at festivals from that. Um, it isn't as different as I thought it would be doing a feature to a short in terms of the festivals.
Mm,
But maybe if you were a bigger film, let's say, you might get more invitations. But for us, it wasn't so much getting invitations as it was submitting, just like you would anything else.
mm,
I think towards the end, once we'd done a few, you have like maybe a programmer who goes, "Hey, I think you'll be good for this one," and I know the other programmer, and they're going to message them. So I did have some nice moments like that where people just like got us into other festivals, but a lot of it was just me paying, and I just did what anyone else would do. I just was like Googling what are the best. Oh, you kind of go with the flow as well. You have to kind of be a bit like pragmatic and reactive. Like I said with the sci-fi thing, like I don't think our plan was initially to do sci-fi festivals as much, but then we started to see that kind of genre festival world being a really good place for it. And even if it was like a kind of more horror film festival, there's one I went to in Brazil called Fantaspoa, which I loved and I had a really good time. And you could see that as more like horror festival, but actually it's not. It's a all genre fantasy festival. But even if you get horror fans, they seem to be a really good crowd in terms of like, they're like really engaged with films and really like films. And so if it was, even if it was a more kind of horror-y festival, if you've got a sci-fi, for example, I wouldn't write that off.
mm.
um and then yeah, just kind of, I guess, just go with whatever seems to be working out. So for us it was the genre we did. We did the world premiere in Austin, which was great, but that's not a genre festival. But then following on from that, it was like Boston Sci-Fi. um and then yeah, we did the UK premiere in the London Sci-Fi, and we did Sydney Sci-Fi. So it was, yeah, that was kind of obviously a track
And
that was working.
did you go to all of these festivals?
I didn't go to Boston actually, but I
Yeah.
tried to go to as many as I could.
Yeah, and is that again, is there a lot of schmoozing to be done there, do you think, to help with promote the film? What do you do when you're at the festival? Is there anything you can do sort of take advantage of it?
I think, yeah, I don't know how much you actually, I don't know how much really, really, really comes from it, but in terms of, like in terms of like meeting like business, I'm not sure, but like you meet other filmmakers who are in the same situation as you and you share stories. And I
Mm,
think that really helps with your development of yourself as a filmmaker in terms of knowing how everything works. And, like we're doing now, you kind of
mm.
just, you sit around but you're doing it like sat at a pub in Brazil, so that's nice.
That
But
does sound nice. Yeah.
you just sat around with other filmmakers, hanging out and sharing stories and sharing tips, and that's a really, really has its own value. Um, and then, yeah, I think it's also like emotionally, it's like there's not often like a moment where you can actually celebrate you, because film making just kind of carries on. Like it never feels there's never like you wrap the shoot, sure, but then you've got to do then you've got to set up the edit, and then you lock picture, but then you still got to do post, and then you finish
Mm,
post, you still got to do festival rather than. So it's like really hard to actually have that feeling of like, okay, we're done, I'm done, like well done me, let's have a beer. That moment doesn't really happen
yeah.
unless you like choose. Okay, I'm going to celebrate this. And I think festivals are a really good time to do that, just to allow yourself a little moment of emotionally going, I'm walking to a cinema, it's playing, and people clap at the end. This is a moment for me to try and absorb,
Yeah,
think about what I've done, and be happy with myself. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think
No,
it's
that's
I
cool.
think it's definitely something you should try and do if you can.
Cool, cool, cool. And then, so you're in Cannes at the moment. Have you been before, and what are your sort of aims for the festival and the market?
Yeah, I've been a few times before. I worked for a sales and distribution company a while ago, so I used to come on work, and then I've come more recently. Last few years, I've been. I just like have other like filmmaker friends who come here as well, so it's like a nice kind of social experience. But I'm also trying to find a producer for my next project.
Yep.
So again, we'll have some of the same teams from before, and I'll be doing some of it myself again as well. But I want to have a new, I want to attach a new producer. So, um, I'm not saying that it will definitely happen here, but it's as good a place as any to do that. I also think that you can just it's you don't know what's going to come of it, but like sometimes things happen like unexpectedly that are good from just being in this environment. So like I remember
Mm.
a few years ago, I was in line at a bakery, and I was in the middle of working on a film at that point, like an edit. And I was just talking loudly on the phone about editing, like, yeah, we need to lock the picture by July. And, the assistant editor's on it now, and like all of these things. And then the guy behind me just tapped me on the shoulder and was like, oh, you're an editor. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I need a re-edit of my film. And I got a pretty hefty job out of that.
Oh, amazing.
With a very lucrative croissant.
Yeah, that's cool. And also, like you were saying with film festivals, because I love Cannes, I'm gutted I'm not there. But what I found with it, it was a really good energizer for like getting yourself back into it because you're suddenly surrounded by all these filmmakers. If you manage to get to some screenings of the films in competition, you're seeing cool films, you're seeing all the posters, you're seeing everything. It really gives you a bit of a boost when you've got a bit of low energy, having either finished a project or in sales or any sort of stage of it. Um, so I say I'm going over there, trying to find a producer. What's your advice? What have you got with you? Are you literally just chatting to people? Have you got a book? Have you got how, what tools do you use?
Mm. Well, I've got a PDF, like a deck
Yep.
of the new project. And I've done a promo video, which is basically they're really weird things, but I'm not. Other people do them as well, but they are very odd things. They're like basically they're little edits, but they use footage from other films, and you try and give a flavor of your film by cutting together shots from other films and adding some text cards and some music. I don't even know what the name for them is. They're kind of sizzle reels, I
Sizzle
guess.
reel, yeah, yeah, I've seen a few of them. They're ones
Yeah,
that, when I first saw one in Cannes, funnily enough, I didn't know what they were, but someone was playing one on a sales stand. I was like, "That's
yeah,
from Jurassic Park 3. That's not yours." Do you know what I mean? I was really
yeah,
like indignant about it. It was like, "No, no, no. You can for that sort of thing. You can kind of poach bits
yeah.
and bobs."
I guess because I'm an editor, I'm just doing it because I can, and I have to
Yeah,
pay someone to do it. I don't know if I'd pay someone to do it, but so yeah, I just arm myself with like little bits like that. Have a script like ready. Like, don't be like go. If you've got a script you're trying to get something from, yeah, it might not be 100% perfect, but have a draft together because there's no point going out meeting someone and then like convincing them to read your script. The big, but actually, I need 2 weeks because I'm still blah, blah, blah.
hmm,
So I think yeah, I think just have a draft ready of some kind, and then yeah, for me a deck. But I don't know if I'm yeah, I don't know how strategic I'm being uh in terms of meeting people.
hmm,
It's more just going to the place. It's more like, yeah, if I meet someone, it will probably be through someone else. So
yeah,
I'm more spending time with the people I already know,
hmm,
and then that your network sometimes expands because through hanging out with the people you already know, they know other people. And um yeah. Do you have
yeah.
any advice? How do I meet more people?
What do I do? I think, well, I did a video recently on Cannes, and unfortunately, my main piece of advice was to set your meetings up before you go,
Yeah.
which is difficult in itself. And with
Mm.
especially with a producer, it's easier if it's a sales agent or distributor because you know where they're going to be and they're going to be there. Whereas, like you say, a
Yeah.
lot of meetings are coincidental or at a party or an event. You just happen to bump into someone who can really, really help you. I think
I think
doing
you're right, and
the
I didn't do that because I didn't know I was definitely coming until quite
yeah.
late. But there's Senando, right, which is like
Yeah,
the website where everyone
yeah,
registers on that if you have accreditation. I know that's a really good way of booking meetings and stuff. That's what I would have done if I was a bit more, if I'd been
yes.
had a bit more advanced.
Fernando or even IMDb Pro is a good one. You get your
Is
free
it
month for
okay?
that, and you can rinse that of contacts. The other thing I was
Yeah.
going to say was doing your PDF lookbooks, whatever you want to call it.
Mm,
Even if you don't show someone that, for me personally, sometimes the mere act of doing that means you know what you're talking about when you actually pitch it. And sometimes it's just the poster on the
yeah.
front that's the thing that gets people's attention. Um, so how long have you been in Cannes?
3 days, I think so.
3 days.
Yeah.
So give me the what was your takeaway from the festival? Has it changed much since the last time you came? Are there any sort of themes you're kind of detecting?
It's very busy. Like I was really a lot of queuing to get into the market.
Mm,
And as somebody who has a film that's being sold by a sales agent here, that's always good. And they seem to be quite chock-a-block with meetings and stuff.
mm,
So I mean, I'm someone that's more in the kind of sales marketing world might know more about the business side, but from the outside, it seems like it's quite busy.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's I think hopefully it's a good one for the people, but yeah, yeah, I don't know really. I don't really know. Yeah, I couldn't really say like it's yeah.
What about so you've walked through the Palais bit, the market. Is
Yeah.
there any because I always whenever I go, oh look, this year's thing is Eric Roberts thrillers or something. Is there like a thing that you're seeing lots of in that Palais? I know those films sometimes are genre films, maybe lower budget, but is there anything you've seen pop
Mm.
up? You're like, oh, seems to be a lot of that this year.
That's a good question. Um, Weirdly, I feel like I've seen slightly more Western posters than I usually see.
That's interesting. Yeah. No, that is interesting because that is, yeah, that's sort of kicked off in music, hasn't it? Everyone's doing westerns in
Yeah,
music. Maybe that's the new
just don't remember because you always see horror, you always see sci-fi. But, I think there's generally, obviously, this is quite obvious, but there's also generally a lot more like tech
mm,
stuff, AI stuff. Every year
yeah.
there's even like a bit more because it becomes more and more of a thing.
Mm,
There's a lot of seminars about whether we will or won't get our jobs taken by robots,
yeah.
basically.
How do you feel? Are you happy for a robot to take your job, or are you just do you think that's going to happen?
um, yeah, I was talking about it with a friend the other day. I think it's more the assistant editors.
Mm,
Yeah, well, it's more like management and file management but I think actually it will just like what this is more my friend's take than my take, but he was
mm,
saying he works as an assistant editor. He was saying that actually it's good when technology comes and speeds things up. It's not bad because no one like it used to be that you had to do an export and it used to take you all day, and a lot of assistant editors' jobs were just sitting there while exports were done. And
mm,
now we've got ways of getting exports out much quicker. It's not like they're complaining about that.
yeah.
It just means that that one part of their job is now smoother, and people find other things for them to do.
Yeah, I bet. I
Probably,
bet.
yeah. And he said, and I hope this is true, that a lot of like, for example, in the world of assistant editing, there's a lot of like overtime, and people can be quite overworked and all this
Mm,
kind of. So if we get to a point where people, where the AI is doing some of the work, and then assistant editors don't have to be, exploited in that way, and have a little bit more of a good work-life balance, then that would be a good thing.
yeah,
Uh,
that sounds
um,
good.
but
That sounds
yeah, I don't think editing wise, I don't. Did you
yeah.
see that? Did you see that film, the Paris, the film like a train to Paris, the AI film? Did you see the trailer
No, I
for it?
haven't. I haven't. Is it
Check it
bad
out.
or
It's
good or
hilarious.
it's hilarious?
'Cause,
I'll have to look that up.
yeah, yeah, it's really bad. But I mean, obviously, but it's like a kind of like what's it called? I always say, is it a Hallmark film or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is that the word?
Oh, like a romance sort
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah. Like one of Romance by Numbers, but it's all
Yeah.
very uncanny valley, and it all is a bit kind of like slightly unintentionally creepy.
Oh, cool. I want to see that. Yeah, the other thing I was going to talk about or ask you about, because I know this is something people always ask me about, is parties. Have you been to any? Have you got any advice for people to get into them?
Parties, even more so than meetings, I think you've got to book it in advance.
Mm,
Like, honestly, like yeah, sometimes some of those I did manage to actually get my act together weirdly, but So a lot of them I didn't, and you have to get the RSVPs, and you have to kind of share them amongst your friends, and yeah, that's the kind of who you know thing. But you have to ask people, like, hey, do you know about anything? And then you have to RSVP before. It's
Yeah,
not This whole thing is not very good for someone that isn't like good at planning in advance. But yeah,
yeah,
even your parties are affected by that. So yeah,
yeah, and it,
you have to get all that organized beforehand, or as much as possible.
yeah,
Um, oh, I mean, I think, do you know what? Actually, I came here for years and I didn't know about this filmmaker accreditation. So
hmm
you get the main market accreditation, which is like quite expensive, but there's a filmmaker accreditation which is actually quite cheap, especially if you do it in advance.
mm,
You can just get a filmmaker badge, and as soon as you've got one of those badges, and they really are very affordable, they're like 25 quid or something. As soon as you've got one of those badges to come into the marche, to actually go into the palais, then there's each country has like forgotten what they're called now, pavilion. I think
yeah,
that's what they call them. They're like
yeah,
essentially like a little tent where they have, they're trying to, sell the idea of shooting in that country, and they have banners up explaining what their tax credits are and all this kind of thing. And each of those countries have a like cocktail at some different point. So even if you don't get a good list of, you know, exclusive parties that you managed to RSVP to, you can just go down, get into the marche, go to the pavilions, have a look at what countries' drinks, and maybe you watch a little video about, the benefits of shooting in that country for 5 minutes, but then you just get to kind of walk around and mingle and have a glass of champagne,
yeah, which is nice.
which is nice.
Which is nice. No, that's good advice. Yeah, I would
Free
say, yeah,
champagne.
free. Yeah, yeah. I've said this on the last video. I said the thing that Brits do, unfortunately, and I've done it in the past, is you get in there and you're like, this beer is free. If I get this beer over the road, it's about a tenner. So I'm going to have as many of these as I can in the next 2 hours. And then you just don't sort of take advantage of meeting people. You just go into guzzle mode. And it can be
Yeah, yeah,
tempting when everything's so
relatable.
expensive. Yeah. So the film's out on streaming. Where can people watch it? Where's the best place to watch it?
So right now you can get it on iTunes. You can get it on Microsoft Store. You can get it on YouTube or Google Play. It's kind of the same thing, right? It's
Yeah,
like the to rent and buy.
cool.
And it will also land other places soon. I think Amazon soon. But for right now, I think YouTube's the place to rent and buy.
YouTube.
And you can. I think it's like £3.50 to rent it.
Bargain, bargain,
Absolute
definitely.
bargain, right?
I've
My,
done no reviews on this channel, but I'll give you like a 4.5 out of 5. Does that sound good? That's how much I
oh,
enjoyed
mate,
it.
that's the
Really
best
good.
review we've got then, because we've got loads of fours, but I've never
There
got
you
a
go.
five.
Honest filmmaker
Four
review.
and a half's officially the best review I've ever got. I'm
No,
super happy with that.
it was really good,
That's
and
going on the poster, man. You're gonna be
yeah,
we're
good,
indie
good.
filmmakers, man. We're a bunch of chances. We're gonna honest filmmaker podcast. 4.5 out of 5.
4.5 out of 5. Put it up there. Yeah,
I
because
know.
like I say, and I was quite surprised. I'd not seen Sean. I'd seen Sean stand up, but I hadn't seen him
Mm.
act like that. And when I saw your poster, I was like, I bet he's in it for 5 minutes. I bet he's not in it.
Oh,
He's
okay.
in it,
Yeah,
isn't he? He's in almost every scene.
yeah, and I think he's a really good physical, like a really good screen actor, because he's a
Yeah,
really good physical comedian.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
when he does stand up, it's all very physical. He does lots of act outs, so I think that works really well for for screen acting. I think there's a lot of crossover there,
Mm,
and he's also just quite dry, which is always, to me, like that kind of over the top big comedy acting that sometimes actors do when they're doing comedy, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Sometimes a comedian's going to be embarrassed by doing that,
yeah.
so they'll be he's quite dry and subtle with his, and yeah, he was very supportive and he was very cool, and um, you know, helped, as well as being in the film, helped a little bit by, like, you know, I went over to, read some of the pages with him beforehand,
Mm,
and he told me what was good and what was less good, and also kind of helped me bring on board a couple of the other comedian stuff. We've got yeah, Marek Larwood, who's I think absolute comedy genius.
mhm.
He's, Marek Larwood? He's
Which one is
Norman.
he? The guy, which part is he?
Bald.
Oh, the ball guy. Oh yeah, no, I love that. His little training video.
How good's he?
Awesome, so good.
Incredible,
Yeah, I
isn't
want
he?
to see him in a film of his own.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's got to be the lead.
Yeah,
I've been trying to work out. Yeah, that's got to happen. Yeah, I think he's incredible. And then we've got like Nick Helm, who's
yeah,
also
saw him. Yeah,
really big comedian. Yeah, he's got a one scene wonder. David Shaw, who's like Jay's dad in The Inbetweeners, and
yeah,
um, Jake Lambert, and yeah, like they've got quite a lot of good comedy talent. And then in terms of the up and coming kind of cast as well, I was quite happy with who we got. And what it's I was saying this on another podcast, it always sounds like you're bigging yourself up too much,
yeah,
but then it's like, what I'm saying is I think they are really good. I'm not saying I am
yeah.
really good.
But then there's a certain amount of pride you take that you cast them and you found them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I take pride in that, and then
Yeah,
directed them,
yeah,
but mainly it's them, and mainly, yeah, mainly I'm just like impressed and
yeah.
lucky that they're in the film. But I am really happy with the casting. Casting director is Alex Podolsky, and he did a really good job. And I'm really, I think for me that's it's like I really like what you said about the film, because what you mentioned are all the things I like about it too.
Good.
So I think the cast have really done a really good job for me, and that's so important with comedy, and the more kind of quirky, arty elements like the rotoscoping and the mixing of color and black and white and all that kind of stuff. That was all really fun to play with when in terms of the filmmaking. But I also think if I was a viewer and hadn't watched this film myself, I think that's probably some of the stuff I would have engaged with as well more.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you want more advice from industry professionals who are out there at the moment working, or you just want to listen to some cool stories from film sets from around the world, then please do subscribe.